Welcome everybody. I'm Rebecca Denny and I'm a digital marketing intern here at LookUp. I serve as an ambassador for this team and have a liaison to the Team Leadership Council. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you all here today. This is going to be a very exciting and engaging conversation revolving around turning the tide on negativity and how to use technology for good. We have a few really amazing and insightful panelists for you today, and I will let them each introduce themselves. Please give us a brief intro on who you are and why you are here. Before we do that though, let me just remind you of two housekeeping items. Any questions you have, please direct them towards the Q&A box, which can be found right below my head. And secondly, feel free to use the chat option in Whova to get conversations going. On that note, let's start with our introductions. Lexi, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here. My name is Lexi. I am the Community Engagement Manager for LookUp. And I am very passionate about building, nurturing, creating, contributing to positive communities online, and really championing, using social media for a tool for good, even though there's so many ways that you can use it the other way, and really teaching and advocating for that, personally as well as with LookUp.
Katie,
who's
do you
next?
want to go next?
Oh yeah, I can go next. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm currently a senior at Columbia, double majoring in psychology and creative writing. I've done a lot of work on mental health, specifically in digital realms. I was an intern at LookUp this summer, did a lot of work on content and research, and now I'm pursuing my PhD in clinical psych so that I can do research on how technology impacts development.
Leslie?
Yeah, hi, I'm Leslie. I have worked in digital marketing for the past 6 years and have watched social media evolve since the MySpace days, which often gets erased. And so I am here because my relationship with it has evolved over the last few years in a way that has become more nourishing and growth oriented. And I would love to share how that has happened for me.
Perfect. And then Sophie?
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a senior at Piedmont High School, so I've grown up with tech basically my entire life. I don't even know if I remember a time when there were no iPhones or Apple products. But I've been in LookUp for about 2 years now, and I'm super passionate about teaching others about how tech affects them negatively and just spreading awareness of all the impacts it has.
Perfect. Thank you for your introductions. I want to start a discussion with the following question. As we saw in the social dilemma, there have been unintended consequences of social media and 24/7 connectivity. I wanted to ask each of you, what have you seen with the ubiquitous nature of the iPhone and the algorithmic powers of technology to polarize? Whoever would like to go first can.
Lexi, do you want to start? You had said that you...
For me, I notice how it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole. And we all were very much, it hit home when we saw that part in the social dilemma, because I think we've all, for good or for bad, gone down rabbit holes where we're like, you're just in one section of YouTube and then you're in another and it's now 4 a.m. or is that just me and it's a personal problem? Anyway, I really think that it can be a problem, however, when you start realizing that somebody else in the comment section has a completely different form of reality than you, when they're completely denouncing science or they're completely disregarding someone else's opinion based on whatever demographic they are, and not really willing to even have a conversation or engage in dialogue. That's very discouraging for me as a person, because I'm really all about the connective human spirit. So I'm trying to understand what your story is, where you come from. But if you don't have a basic line of respect, that's really hard to do, or a shared form of baseline of, it's beyond reality. It's a sense of, I actually see you in your perspective. And if someone doesn't have that, that could be very dangerous. And I feel like that is entirely too possible right now with the way rabbit holes can be set up, or the way that like you can be low-key brainwashed in a way, like if you want to get that real. And that to me is very discouraging.
I can go next. Oh,
go, Katie.
I wanted to talk about the way that iPhones have changed the way that we're living our offline lives. I think it's changed it in two main ways. Sort of like Sophie, I grew up pretty much surrounded by technology my whole life. Like I was born in '98, I was right on that cusp. And I think that the iPhone has changed. Basically, it's stifled an ability for making mistakes because of the permanence of social media, but it's also changed the purpose for living day-to-day life. And a good phrase to encapsulate that would be do it for the gram, right? Doing something simply to get a photo of it to put on Instagram changes the entire purpose behind doing activities with friends. It shifts it from being an intrinsically joy-inducing activity to something that's actually becoming performative, even when you're offline. So stifling growth and changing actual purpose on a deeper level are my two answers.
And I'd love to jump in and add slightly different perspective, focusing on the ubiquitousness of the iPhone, because I grew up, I had social media in middle school, but it was on my computer. Like I had to go home to use it. I didn't have an iPhone with 24/7 connection until my junior year of college. So it's been really interesting to watch that change in how we relate to discomfort. Like when I'm uncomfortable watching a TV show, I'll reach for my phone now. Like I won't sit with the discomfort of whatever awkwardness is happening because I can escape. And it's provided 24/7 access to escapism, which was not the case before. And I think I'm a big advocate of feel your feelings. And so like that's one of the big things that I promote on all my social channels. And I often need to like leave my phone in the other room so I can actually work through the discomfort. So that's been one of the things that I've noticed, and also similar to the permanence of making mistakes. Like we didn't used to be able to film our friends at any moment when they were doing something weird or falling or whatever embarrassing thing. We had our like point and shoot cameras that we then had to go and upload. And so like, I feel like we're more monitored than ever before because of that. I think that's all.
Yeah, I totally agree with Leslie. So for me, I got my first phone when I was in 6th grade. So I was probably like 11. And with my first phone came all my social media channels. And I think like the iPhone, it's been around, it's like ubiquitous, like you said, Rebecca. And I think kids, they see so many polarizing opinions online so early in their life. And then they get closed off to the other side, like a different point of view, because the way the algorithm works, you click on something that you like to see, and then the social media app will shoot you a bunch of posts just like that one, and you don't get to see the other side of things. And I also wanted to touch on Katie. She said performative, and I think performative action is such a big issue nowadays. Like people will post something and share something just because they see others doing it, and it's hard to know if they're actually learning the message behind all these posts.
I would like to jump in and say that directly ties to performance activism, especially in light of the world being on fire, if you don't mind me speaking plainly right now. And there's a lot of people who they are not actually taking the time to unlearn when it comes to issues of the world, of climate change, of police brutality, of gender equality, of LGBTQIA, disenfranchised Indigenous peoples. I could go on for days, but the point that I'm making is a lot of people will change their cover photo or put up a black box. I think that's the beginning and end of it. And that's basically performance activism. It's performative action online that doesn't actually go deeper into trying to learn, unlearn, and grow. And that to me is very concerning. And I'd like to see a shift towards moving beyond just a hashtag, though hashtags can be powerful. I'll get into that later. And so I just like to thank Sophie for bringing that up.
Yeah, and Lexi, oh, sorry, Rachel. Rebecca, do we need to move on?
No. I was just going to say, to go off of what Lexi and Sophie were beginning to talk about, I think it would be interesting if we could maybe transition into hearing your stories of how you've taken some of this negativity in times like this and turn it into positive. And I know each of you have very unique stories on how you've gone about that. So if you could each share that with us, that would be great.
I guess I can start. So at my high school, we use a lot of Instagram accounts to promote clubs. And over quarantine, over COVID, two Instagram accounts started. One was it was like victims of sexual assault could submit an anonymous story and they would post it on the channel. And then there was people who had experienced racism at my high school could also post. And these are two separate accounts. And to me, this was a really interesting way of using social media, like to show and expose all this like racism and sexual assault that goes on at my high school. Wait, Rebecca, can you repeat the question?
I basically was just asking how you've taken all of this negativity and turned it into something positive, and how you use technology for good, and to just share your personal experiences with it, like you just did.
Right. So with these two accounts, there became kind of an awakening at my community that we have to pay more attention to these stories because there's so many of them that people didn't even realize. And that was really a great positive experience with tech I had recently.
I can go next. My answers are a lot more personal, which I think is a great contrast to what Sophie said, because I've had similar experiences with Columbia pages. We've had survivors of sexual assault posting anonymously, racist incidents, Greek life issues, lots of different pages like that. But on a personal level, I used to struggle a lot with social media and feeling like I was shaping myself to fit a box that would receive more likes rather than fewer likes. But at the same time, I wasn't quite ready to give it up, especially now in the COVID era where I'm in Florida and all my friends are in New York and I'm at school remotely for my senior year. So a solution that I found was deleting my Instagram, creating a new one. This is similar to the Finsta solution, except I vowed that this would be my only Instagram. And not only would it be my only account, but it would only be followed by people who I would hug in person, people who I truly know, not just people that I want seeing my content so that I can influence them and change the way they see me. And the second way I've turned the tide on negativity is using my computer as a source of basically positive change. So I'm a crisis counselor on Crisis Text Line, which is basically a place where anyone can text in if they're ever feeling sad or stressed. And as a counselor, I'm on the other end and I'm talking them through it. And it's been probably the most positive way I've ever used technology. It is beyond authentic because these people are coming in with real crises. And there are a lot of really, really positive ways to be using tech like this, which are basically combating social media for me. They feel like complete opposites. There's one and it's so authentic that people are coming in anonymously, and the other that people are creating personal brands.
I'll jump in next. Thank you, Katie. When I started my Instagram, I like back in the day, it was all about like getting inspired about people doing cool things with their bodies. Like I was really into like strength and American Ninja stuff and all of that. And over the years, realized how that impacted my body image. And then my face is partially paralyzed, which happened in college. And because that trauma was so visible, I started sharing like the deep personal journey that I was going on through it, and like sharing from my soul, and it shifted the way that I started doing things. Not immediately, like over time. I still was very performative. Really, I went through a yoga on mountains phase back in 2015, which, like, sorry for my appropriation. And like that happened, but over the years, like I've discovered intuitive eating accounts and like have changed my relationship with food through learning about intuitive eating. And my Instagram has become a space for growth and healing. So I follow other people who have PTSD, who are in recovery from alcoholism, which are both things that I have and experience, and like follow people from communities that are healing and are sharing their authenticity. And I continue to share vulnerability. And one of the biggest things that's shifted for me in the past couple years is moving from posts to stories. And like I post occasionally in the feed, but most of what I do on Instagram is in my stories. And I've found that that actually sparks conversations for me. When I post something, I can moderate a community conversation. But when I put something in my story, it creates a DM feedback loop. And like I go to Instagram for the direct messages now. Like that's what I'm there for. I've connected with people from my network who I didn't otherwise know well. And like we've bonded over some of the vulnerable things I've shared. Like someone else is trying to get sober. And like we've gotten to connect in deeper levels, and I've gotten different perspectives from my community on issues that are outside of my physical world, which is the other biggest thing I do. Like I follow a lot of people to help me unlearn my biases and expose myself to voices of people outside of my very homogenous. I live in Boulder, Colorado, which is like not just white, but like white, thin, affluent, like very homogenous. So it's really helpful to get on social media and see someone and recognize a thought and then be like, I'm going to follow them so I can unlearn this. And that, yeah, I think that's so I use it for healing, learning, and connection. Those are my 3 things.
For me, I really used social media in particular to spread positivity as much as possible. I used to be like a wholesome meme page on Facebook. But recently, people who know me or know me at all, like as in like from hello, know that I adore K-pop, specifically the band BTS. I'm going to try not to fangirl too hard during this entire conference. But the point that I'm making is I've actually found a lot of solace and healing through the communities on Twitter specifically, especially in the wake of the George Floyd protests, because as you can imagine, I was extremely depressed, sad, and angry. And it was amazing seeing people all over the world who really connect with one band in one group. And it wasn't just this one band, many others did this as well. Come in solidarity and say, we see you, translating messages of love and hope. And we're standing with you. Some people got out on the street and protested in their own country. It's all the way over in Korea, in Pakistan, in India, in Latin America, everywhere, literally everywhere. And seeing that outpouring of love from fans really helped bolster myself, but also feeling like I'm feeling seen. I was one of many accounts who drowned out hate on hateful hashtags. So as much as many of you may have seen Black Lives Matter as a hashtag, some people also saw White Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. And whatever intent was there was a lot of hate on there, a lot of things that I don't actually want to spew out right now because I don't want to offend any of you. But just imagine the worst, and it was there. So what me and millions of other people did and fans is flooded those hashtags with positivity in terms of sharing our favorite videos of our favorites dancing or cracking jokes or doing our favorite songs and little edits and sharing what we love to literally drown out the hate. Using threads on Twitter and Instagram to then share information, because if you get a bunch of fans together of all ages, races, demographics, we're great at researching because we will tell you when the new album's coming out, when a new concert is. So we use that information and those research skills to then say, hey, these are the different literatures that you can read on what it means to be Black in America, or what it means to be disenfranchised in another country based on your color or based on your socioeconomic background, or the intersections of anything like that. And also, here's where you can be an activist in a way that if you're not comfortable stepping outside of your house during a pandemic, these are links that you could go to watch a video that will then be, the AdSense will then get donated by the influencer. Or literally crashing tip lines that would then expose people's identities as protesting, even though they were masked up or they wanted to be anonymous. And by crashing, I mean, like in Texas, I'm pretty sure we disabled a website that was like a snitch line in Dallas. Kind of proud of that. But the point that I'm making is it was amazing to find. I was already hook, line, and sinker into the community because we all like the music. We all like the personalities of our favorites. But it's another thing entirely to feel so seen by, and the outpouring of love and galvanizing together for a good that's actually somewhat inspired by a group in the specific sense of BTS. And then I'll try to be brief. They really naturally advocate for youth. They actually work with the UNICEF and the UN. And spoken about violence against youth. And within a week, I want to say, of the heat online, they were actually one of the few groups, the groups themselves, like BTS themselves, donated $1 million, about 1 billion won, towards the Black Lives Matter movement. At the time, there was only 3 celebrities who donated at that value that could. So I not only felt seen by the fandom, we're called the BTS Army, the army. I felt seen by men, boys I idolize in terms of wanting to, I'm not going to cry during this, wanting to be so inspired by. And the point that I'm making is that's how I've been using social media right now, is being an activist, finding my own healing through music, connecting with people with different cultures. I'm also learning Korean right now, online, and speaking with people. So it's really a dynamic, multi-leveled form of using social media in my world. Okay, that was probably 10 minutes. I'm gonna pause now.
No, thank you all so much for being so genuine and bringing in your personal experiences. I think going off of everything you all talked about, and maybe Leslie can start with this, is for those listening that are struggling to use Instagram in a more authentic, genuine, proactive manner, how would you recommend going about making this transition and spreading it more into a movement? And maybe touching on how difficult that transition was for you. And also, someone in the chat, Emma, asked, when escaping your phones and disengaging from Instagram, how do you recommend someone who is socially awkward do this when social media is their outlet? So that was kind of a lot, but.
So we're talking about our transition into making it a better space for us. And then it as a social outlet, how do we engage with the world?
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, like, I follow hashtags. So one of the ways that I find new accounts is by finding a topic that I'm interested in and then following one of those hashtags, and all of the posts get brought into your feed. Like right now I'm following the CPTSD hashtag, and it keeps bringing me like more stuff that is what I need to hear right now. And like slowly starting to replace the accounts that make me feel insecure or like spark anxiety in me. Like Instagram doesn't necessarily make me feel anxious anymore, in the sense that I'm not as comparative to people with like their bodies or any of that, because if someone's account makes me look in the mirror differently at myself, I unfollow it or I mute it if they're a friend. Sorry. I don't unfollow friends, but I'll mute them if I am getting those vibes. And slowly over time, like finding different topics, or like some of my friends who are activists, like making sure that their content is the stuff I'm looking at the most. And one of the biggest challenges is the algorithm, because like since I started following therapists and healing accounts, a lot of my like Black Lives Matter, fat phobia content has gone away because Instagram just gives you the stuff you've most recently been looking at. So one thing I do is if I notice that I haven't seen stuff from an account recently, I'll go there and like scroll through all their posts and teach the algorithm what I want to look at, that is benefiting me. And that I've seen great success with that. And now like my discover feed is all like how to manage depression and like all of these things that are actually helpful content that gives me inspiration to go do better things and to go take care of myself. And I have an addictive personality. I deal with social media addiction, and it isn't always a perfectly positive experience, but I know that when I'm in there, I'm getting content that is connective and nourishing and moving me forward. And that has been my saving grace through COVID, honestly. Like, to the second question of how do we put the phone down and manage? I've been giving myself so much extra space and time to be on social this year because it has been so much harder to connect with people in person. And there are only like a couple people that I actually am seeing in real life. So I've been giving myself more space and more compassion for myself if I spend more time on Instagram than I would in a non-triple crisis year. I feel like there's so many crises right now. But when I do notice that I'm reaching for it because I'm anxious and I'm avoiding feelings in myself, I will put it in a drawer in my room and like go for a walk and make sure I look at the leaves and look at the ground and connect with nature and connect back to myself. Or even when I'm watching TV, I'll leave it in my room so that I can be present with the story and be present with what I'm doing. I think that's the biggest thing for me. And in that, when I'm more connected to myself, it's easier to connect with others in real life. But when I'm like constantly escaping, I have a harder time. Like the first time I saw a friend after quarantine, like it was hard to make eye contact. So that was pretty long, but hopefully that set a stage.
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone else want to address that question?
Rebecca, I can address your first one. I'm not so sure about the second. But to me, like I think Leslie was talking about Instagram was for the DMs. So I think for me, when I like am seeing a lot of like posts and stuff, I try to swipe up on people's stories and just be like, hey, like I agree with this, or like, why do you think this? And like bringing those conversations off just the image form into words and actual like digital conversations you're having with people. And I also try to follow, I think I talked about this in Social Dilemma, but I try to follow people who I don't have the same opinion as, but who I know like I know that the comments on their posts aren't just going to be bashing people who have like the wrong opinions, but it's like civil discourse, like they're actually taking the time to um, learn and think about what other people are saying, and they're not closed-minded.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a response for
go for it, Katie.
For Emma's question about social awkwardness.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really tough at first to change your coping mechanism, but so it's definitely going to be a push for the first few weeks, maybe even months. But the most important thing to do, at least what I've found, is find other ways to distract your mind. So if you're in person and you're trying to look busy because you don't want to interact with someone sitting next to you in a waiting room, something I like to do is look around the room and pretend I'm going to be quizzed on the room. Pretend somebody's going to ask me about random details in the room. And I'll say, okay, there are 4 lamps, red walls. And I realize how much I never notice about the world if I'm looking down, which is so obvious. But if you kind of gamify it, that's one way. Counting is like a really useful way to help social anxiety too, that's something I've struggled with. And then another thing I do is just have something to keep your hands busy, because a lot of the time it's not even about phones. It's just like you want something to do, whether this is literally like knitting or even just like holding a book. Fidget spinners aren't cool anymore, but like anything can make a huge difference. So just bringing alternative tools and not expecting yourself to just sit there and do nothing instead is a little more realistic.
Yeah, thank you. We have a question in the chat from Avery, which I feel like Lexi, maybe you can tackle this first, and then whoever else, Katie, maybe you can touch on cancel culture with this. So he said, my question has to do with the confirmation bias that is a direct product of the algorithmic design of social media. What sort of solutions or ideas do you guys have or think of surrounding the ability to have discussions with others who have varying opinions and understanding other points of view when people have become so set in their opinions?
For me, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I'm a little bit of an extrovert. So I have no problem asking people what is on their mind and what they think about something that might be a little bit harder of a conversation for someone else. In terms of to do that on social media, however, I found that the comment section of an article is not the place to do it. That's where you're going to get the people who are a little bit more, first of all, it's actually halfway full of bots. That's the first thing most people don't realize is that comments can be written by bots. So fighting with a bot is a waste of your time. But specifically on how to engage more with your algorithm and have a deeper conversations or find people with different varying opinions, I'd actually try to not go with the first thing you see on your Discover page. This is before you do maybe an unfollow spree or maybe before you start exploring a new hobby. I'd actually comb through and do a little bit of self-reflection on thinking of what actually brings you the most joy. And then start finding accounts that actually inspire you the most. This is general tips on the algorithm itself. Because what you engage with, like I know a lot of people during today have talked about the echo chamber effect. You can actually try to train your algorithm to get you to different places. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're like, okay, this person has a little bit more centrist or someone who has a different thought process than I do on something, and I want to hear more about them. Comment in their comment section, not in the article that is like suggested to you, because then you'll get more information on that person. First of all, you'll know it's a person. Let's just start there. But the point that I'm making is that the more you engage with something that's a little bit different and you deviate from your timeline, then the logarithm will be like, oh my God, okay, they want more of this. Let's give her more of this. But then you also have to like loop it back in with something else to counter it. Because if you always try to engage with that same person or that same person who thinks that same way, then you only get that viewpoint. So my answer is you have to be more active than most people are used to when it comes to social media. I will actually try to play with my algorithm sometimes and be like, okay, I've seen this one fan cam of Jimin 12 times. I don't need to see this again. Let me pivot and like learn about how to use washi tape in my bullet journal. That was an oddly specific reference. The point that I'm making is shifting, and it's a constant balance that you have to redo to basically engage with the beast a little bit, to then like poke it and prod it into showing you more and showing you varied would be my advice.
Katie, are you gonna jump in? If not, I have something to add.
You can go.
Okay. One thing that I decided in 2020 is that I'm canceling debate. I no longer debate with people. I only discuss with intent to learn. And what that looks like for me is avoiding people that I know aren't willing to listen. Like if their opinion is so radically different from mine, I haven't historically made progress. So I've stopped talking to them. I've gone like a couple steps over instead of the far side. And I find that when I'm like a couple steps over from where my beliefs lie and I ask questions, like So the difference between debate and discussion for me is debate says, where are your facts? And the discussion says, can I learn more? And like, there's such a difference when you come in with intent to defend where you are, which some people do learn that way, and they learn how to argue other opinions. Personally, I just get triggered and go into like fight or flight mode and get really angry and can't actually take in new information. So I've pivoted and started trying to get curious and saying like, okay, that's different. Why is it different? How can I push myself? And asking questions instead of proving like, and I will call out shit that is fundamentally wrong. Like there are opinions that are fundamentally wrong. That's another thing I've come to understand this year. Like if we look back on history, there have been wrong things happening. So like your feelings are valid, your opinion might be wrong, and my opinion might be wrong. So I come in, with intent to learn, asking questions, getting curious. And I have found I'm able to connect with people who don't perfectly align with my viewpoint through that.
Does anyone else have anything to say in regards to that question? Okay, being that we only have 3 minutes left, I wanted each of you to kind of go through and just give advice to everyone on how to recommend as a society, how do we continue to work on this shift from negativity to positivity, not only in your own lives, but for everyone as a whole?
My number one tip is to make your technology a tool rather than you being used by your technology. And this looks like, my friends hate me for this. This looks like being on Do Not Disturb 24/7. It means not being able to be distracted by something out of your control, because that is scary and dystopian, at least in my mind. The idea that I could be working on something in deep focus and something could just take me out of it, completely out of my control. That means throwing your phone across the room if you need some space, and going to it when you need it or want it, and basically making it something that you seek out rather than responding to it speaking to you.
Who wants to go next?
For me, I'd say my number one tip is to just be aware of what you're putting out online. Like your actions can affect other people. And if everyone's aware of what they're putting out online, just learn from other people also. Like have an open mind to what you're seeing, but just make sure you're always checking your facts.
Thank you, Sophie. Leslie, I see you're off mute.
Yeah, mine is about authentically being yourself. So my Instagram bio is like doing my best to be a human being, not a human brand. And over the past couple years, it's been really hard to look at my Instagram feed and feel jealous that other people's has a look and a feel and a brand to it. But I have worked really hard to not do that. Like I used to try, but I've worked really hard to not do that and to be as human as Instagram was when it started, when the algorithm wasn't like this, when we took a picture of our photo and put a weird filter on it, or of our coffee and like put a weird filter on it. And it was raw and it was real. And it like, sometimes I'll post pictures of myself after I've been crying. Like not everyone needs to be that vulnerable and that raw and open. It definitely like is a learned thing, but through showing the parts of my life that aren't as beautiful and glamorous, I have fostered connections and gotten feedback from other people that I've helped them make space and like connect with those pieces of themselves that I'm sharing. So I would say be as true to yourself and as vast in your content, not just laughing with friends or on a mountain or whatever your unintentional content pillars. Like most of us have content pillars, even if we didn't plan them.
Perfect. And then Lexi, super quick. Sorry, we're almost out of time.
It's okay. I purposely wanted to go last because I can get long-winded, so this will force me not to be. Follow your joy. Seriously, if you have something that you're obsessed with or something you want to learn about or something that drives you, makes you happy, makes you get out of bed in the morning, follow that and engage with that the most. If you want to find more positivity online, be the positivity online, drown out all the hate that you can when you have the bandwidth to be. And when you're done or you're tired of whatever, you can always take a break in terms of like, if you're interested in digital activism, or if you're, this is too much work right now, or it's fine. It's okay to not have the right answers of what you should do to be positive, but basically be your own light and try to foster and nurture that of your own self, and then follow people who do that for you in kind. That helps loads.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for being so genuine and authentic with your answers.
This is so much fun.